Hi, thank you for joining us for this episode of Springdale Today. I'm your host, Mary Jorning. We're visiting today with dedicated teachers Jessie Walls and Alyx Ramsey of Jim D. Rollins School of Innovation. They're chatting with us today about their stories as teachers and what keeps them coming back from the classroom every single day. Ladies, thank you for being here today. We sure do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it too.
I'm curious about your personal story. You know, what brought you guys to teaching? Why did you think that this was a career that you were really interested in pursuing?
You can start if you'd like.
I was one of those students who was always considered the problem. I like to talk. And so my teachers they kind of looked over me because I always, annoyed them. And I remember a certain story. I had a speech impediment and I would have to go for speech therapy. And I was walking past the GT room and I looked inside and was looking at what the kids were doing. And I said, I think I belong there. And my teacher goes, no, you don't. And I remember how devastating that was as a kid to just feel like I didn't belong, I wasn't wanted. And I told my mom at a young age that I wanted to grow up and make sure that every kid felt valued in a classroom. And so that kind of drives who I am in a class. I want to see my kids, and I want to let them know that they all bring value to the world around them.
And then what brought you to Springdale School?
So Springdale, I actually interned at George Elementary, and I was so nervous for my interview. And I was standing there, and the music teacher at the time, Karen Pierce, came around the corner wearing a giant pink fuzzy hat and a pink feather boa. And she was like, have a fabulous day, and walked by, and I was like, this is where I want to be. I had actually never dreamt of coming to Northwest Arkansas. I'm a 501 girl from Bryant, and I actually wanted to go back to Bryant prior to entering Springdale schools. But from the first moment being in those schools and just seeing those teachers interact with kids, I felt like it was home. And sure enough, I interned at George, and it was home. Dr. Thompson was the principal, and she just opened her doors. She sharpened me to be a great teacher, and I've never looked back.
Well, that's a wonderful story. And I relate to that. I was that student, too, who was a little bit of a handful. And it does overflow into every area. And Alyx, what about you? What brought you into teaching and then subsequently to Springdale?
Yes, so actually, I was the kid who my whole life I knew I wanted to be a teacher because I very fortunately had phenomenal luck. As a kid, I had phenomenal teachers throughout my whole educational career. Starting back to my kindergarten teacher, Katie White, she was the epitome of what the perfect kindergarten teacher is. She was older. Her grandson was actually in my grade level, but she was funny and kind. And I remember one day, the things kids remember, this is what I remember, but we earned a class reward, and it was for her to try a sour warhead in front of all of us. And I know that's so silly, but she just made school a place that felt so happy and home to me, and I wanted to do that. When I was in high school, we had a Teachers of Tomorrow program, and so I, as a high school senior, for every day for a year, got to volunteer in a first grade classroom, and that solidified it for me. I was like, okay, yes, this is actually where I want to be. I love kids. I love being the person who gets to bring new learning opportunities to them, and I want to do that forever. But specifically Springdale, I also interned at George, and I met Jessie Walls, and she was the person who showed me that teaching is more than just showing up every day and teaching kids to learn. It goes far beyond that, and it is the relationships we get to build, the joy that we get to spark, the curiosity that we get to just cultivate. And George was that for me too. I was there for 7 years before we came here. And Springdale Schools Jessie said it perfectly, it's like home. I feel like, obviously Springdale Schools is massive, right? When we think numbers wise, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels very much like small town pride. And I'm also from Bryant as well.
Funny story.
I didn't didn't know if I wanted to go back or not. I really hadn't thought that far in advance. When it came to my internship, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go one step at a time, you know. But truly, like day one, walking into George, feeling like a part of something that was so wonderful, I was like, okay, I can't be anywhere else. This is where I'm meant to be forever. So yeah, that's what led me to Springdale.
And it's kind of funny that we both were from Bryant, went to George, and then are now here.
Yeah.
But we didn't know each other before teaching.
Yeah, no.
We met and that was so sweet of you to say. I'm like,
oh, what's true?
I'm glad you kept talking.
I know, I couldn't look at you.
But it was really sweet the day that I found out about Rollins.
Yeah.
And learned what the mission was here and what we were doing. I called her because I had gone to a meeting for furniture, and I called her and I said, I need you to meet me in the office. And she's like, why? And so we got to the office, and I was crying, and she's like, what? And I said, we're leaving. She was like, what? And I said,
Career decision made.
She's like, where are we going? And I was like, we're going to go fulfill our dream at Rollins of innovation. And it's kind of funny, like I said, we didn't know each other before this, but through our love for kids and our love for teaching, we have become a team that's
literally. It's really funny too, because like she said, we didn't know each other before at all, but like our journeys have been obviously like copy and paste the same. Interned at George, got a job at George, came here, we teach the same grade level, we are teammates. It's funny when you ask kids too, because you don't often see one of us without the other. So we call ourselves like the dynamic duo. We don't know if anyone else calls us that, but we do.
I was thinking it, so it applies.
Where we were Glinda and Alphaba for Halloween.
We were.
So, you know, two other dynamic duos.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys a little bit about mentorship and people in your lives who have kind of helped you realize that teaching wasn't just a job, but it was a calling. And it sounds like Jessie might touch on that a little bit, but are there people in your lives who really moved you into teaching and helped you realize that this is so much more than just ABCs and 1, 2, 3s?
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I would first like to say Dr. Thompson. I mean, she is pivotal when I think about who I am as a teacher. She always encouraged and pushed us to be the best, to have data to back it up, but that our students were beyond, yes, their data is important, but they were a person, and that our job is that we hold their lives in their hands. And then also Dr. Rollins, I mean, I know he wasn't my personal mentor, but as an intern, my first year in 2004, so long ago, he always would start the year off with a quote. And his quote that year was, "Children are messages we send to a future we'll never see." And that has been my mantra of that. Like, they are my legacy. They are the message that I send, and I want that message to be of hope and of wonder and joy. And so I think about like people who have mentored me specifically, but then also people who have embodied what I believe about education.
Right.
And those are two big ones for me.
Yeah, something that Jessie actually always says, and she said this to me early on when I was an intern at George, because she was one of the mentor teachers. She was never my mentor teacher specifically, sadly, but I will never forget her saying this. She said, you know, there's a difference between a classroom teacher and a school teacher. A classroom teacher, they might be the teacher that gets the highest test scores, right? They shut that door. What they do in that classroom is phenomenal, but it ends there. And a school teacher is someone whose legacy bleeds beyond the classroom. And I remember her saying that to me, and that like struck a chord. You know, that's the kind of teacher I want to be. Like, the legacy that I leave is not just the 25 kids that are in my room every day. Like, I want it to not only impact them, their families, the kids in my grade level, this school, because this school matters, right? Wherever I am, whatever school it is. And so Jessie taught that to me for sure. But I have also, like, other teachers in my life. My mentor when I was an intern, Beverly Loomis, was the epitome of like Southern Belle, but like so fun. She taught kindergarten only for 42 years. And that woman, you would have never known when you met her. She was a spitfire. She was funny. The way she got kids to learn was like, every day I was just like hungry for more, because that's what I wanted to be. And just like teachers I've had along the way, like I remember my AP Lit teacher in high school, Mr. Daly. I don't know why, like he probably doesn't remember me out of a crowd of people, but I remember, I'll never forget him telling me like, hey, you have the potential to like pass your AP exam if you put the hard work into it. And just like hearing those words to me like pushed me to be the best that I can be. And I also want to translate that into my students. You know, I have this high belief in them so that they then also have it for themselves.
Yeah, sometimes youth don't consider what they're capable of until someone tells them. And because they're just astounded that they have that capacity.
Yeah.
So you guys went to college, came from Bryant, went to George, decided that Rollins was your next step. How has that why evolved for you guys from when you first started to transitioning to where you're at now, and why you teach every day and show up for these students every day?
Yeah. Well, I think at the heart, ultimately the why doesn't change because the why is the kids, right? But the path of how we cultivate that why has changed a little bit. And I'll let Jessie touch more on like our innovative journey, but like ultimately the heart of this is the kids, right? Like that's why we're teachers. That's why we're in education, is because we want to mold the minds of the future to believe the incredible things that they're capable of. But yeah, I think our journey started at George with our innovation grant from Walmart, and I'll let you talk more about that. But
well, I love how you set that up too, because I think that's what I was going to say as well. It's like it started off with I wanted to allow kids to feel seen and valued, and then through that Walmart grant that we did back in 2017, we started learning strategies for not just helping them see, just as a person, I'm worthy and I bring value, but then also to recognize who they were as learners. And then what are their skills that they have, and how can they build on those skills?
Right.
And so that has really helped my pedagogy evolve over time. Of, yes, it is so important and it's essential to help them feel safe and loved, but then also to help them know how to turn those lights on. You know, they have all these lights and all these skills in their life, and it's our job to kind of like find that and say, oh my goodness, you're so good at this. Will you come and share this? Will you bring this passion to the classroom? And that just has allowed our students to blossom. And I see from the last 20 years of my teaching career, just the changes that I've been able to bring. And it makes me excited for what's the next 10 years.
Right.
You know, what else am I going to be able to do with students and kids?
Yeah, and I think like along with that too, like the strategies we've learned ever evolve. You know, like technology evolves, right? With that, not just technology, but like that, our strategies as teachers evolve, because also the needs of kids evolve, right? The ways to get their attention change, the ways to get them engaged in that lesson changes, but ultimately it goes back to the kids being the why. So every day, if we're not striving to be the best that we can be, then we're not only like selling them short, their potential short, we're selling ourselves short as educators. And so, you know, Dr. Thompson built a great culture of that at George, of like, hey, we're always going to be iron sharpening iron to get better, right? We're always going to be looking for that. And with that grant, you know, Jessie got to go to New Zealand, learned some incredible strategies from schools in New Zealand. We brought that back to George. We spearheaded those there. Then that's what brought us here to Rollins. And so it's crazy how full circle it is, but also at the end of the day, it comes back to the kids.
Well, and you talk about achievements like grants.
Yeah.
So, what moments are you guys particularly proud of as educators? Sort of whether it's a personal milestone that you've reached, or perhaps a recognition that you were blessed with?
Well, I've been honored to be blessed with a lot of things, but I think, honestly, if I wanted to talk about a true achievement, it's those moments in my classrooms when my kids look at me and they're like, hey, I can do this. I am smart.
Yeah.
Those are the moments that actually, when I go home and I put my head on my pillow, that's what I dream about. Right. Those are the things that I keep searching for every year. I have been honored to be Teacher of the Year for both George and Rollins. And then I was honored to be Springdale Teacher of the Year, which was an incredible honor. It felt very heavy because I was like, wow, there are a lot of amazing teachers that I work with. There are a lot of amazing teachers in this district. And to represent the district was a big honor. I wish that there was an opportunity I love what you're doing to bring and to highlight the teachers in our district. I think they're fabulous. Watched a lot of the videos you guys are doing. And I think that brings honor to a job and to a profession that sometimes the world doesn't get to see all the fun, you know, the people that we have and we have a lot of amazing people.
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, Jessie hit the nail on the head with, you know, the achievements are those small moments, but also, I was telling my friends this at dinner last night, actually. The moment I realized I was a good teacher was not when I saw the growth in data, right? Like, yes, for sure, that is a measure, right? But the moment I realized I was a good teacher is when kids that I had previously taught and they had moved on, came back and they were like, Ms. Ramsey, you were my favorite teacher because you made me believe this about myself. Or a parent came back, or a parent's like, hey, you taught my other kid, I need you to teach this one too. To me, that goes far beyond just like the outward recognition, right? Sometimes it's those quiet moments. Or even today, I had a kid in my class who looked at me and he said, I am really understanding now why you told me phonics is the most important thing we're gonna learn. Because all of the rules that we're learning, I am understanding this so much more, and it is also hard. And it's moments like that
like mic
too.
drop.
Yes, where you're like, okay, I have done my job. Yes. I can go home today proud, you know? Yeah, it's just, big recognition is huge. And Jessie also didn't mention she was one of the top finalists for Arkansas Teacher of the Year for the state. But also, she's right too. Those little moments, those moments you have with the kids, those are the things you hold on to at night. Yeah,
They are.
Were there any students that had you revisit or maybe reshape how you teach that maybe were a challenge that you didn't think you might encounter as a teacher?
yeah.
So I keep kind of walking around that idea. I had a student. So when I was at George, I actually got to loop. So I would have them in first grade to second. And I had a student that I had in first and second. And we were doing a lesson on growth mindset in first grade. And I was asking them, I'm going to say a statement and you tell me if you agree or not. And one of the statements was, everyone can learn. And all my little first graders were like, yes, we all agree, except for this one kid. He's like, no, I don't agree. And I was like, is he being a turkey or does he not agree? You know, and I said, okay, can you explain why you don't agree? And he goes, I think, and he pointed out kids in the class. He goes, well, he's smart because his parents help him at home. And he's just smart. And he was like, and I don't have any of that. And I saw in his anger and frustration that that's truly what he believed of himself. And I was like, this is it. This is my hill to die on this year, is to make this boy believe in himself. And that was when I was going through a lot of the work with the grant, and we were talking about making the learning visible to the students. And I worked with this group of kids specifically on, okay, so instead of me just knowing we were talking about like using place value. How does the child develop that understanding and what does it look like at each layer? I went through that with the kids. So this is what we would call this a level 1, and a level 2, and level 3. And I will never forget the day where he was like, can I go work with these 2 kids? And he chose 2 other little turkeys. And I was thinking, I don't know how this is gonna work out. And they were like, we also wanna go work in the hallway. Well, I was trying to be flexible, let kids learn what they want to learn. Okay, that was prior to Rollins. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave the door open so I can listen. And they were out there working, and then he comes in there and he goes, hey, I need that poster off the wall. And I was, okay. He took the poster and he went back in the hallway and I was like, what are they doing? And he came back in the room and he says, Miss Walls, we just figured out something. And I said, what? He goes, I just figured out to move from level 1 to 2, all I have to do is label my numbers. So I did that. But then I realized to move from level 2 to level 3, I can just write a number sentence. I was like, oh my goodness, look at you. He goes, yeah, I'm a genius. And I was thinking, I started crying. He was like, I don't know why you're crying. I said, it's okay, I got something in my eye. But it was that moment of, he felt like he had done all that on his own.
Yep.
Which is what I want. Yes, I want them to be appreciative of me.
Yeah.
I do. But truth be told is, I actually want them to know and go search out the knowledge for themselves and to believe that it's within them.
Yeah.
To find that knowledge.
100%.
And then to come back to me to celebrate.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story.
I will never forget that boy.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. And it was kind of a mic drop moment. Just
I'm telling you, it was 10 years ago, and it's my favorite story ever.
Do you have anything that you might share?
I think, oh gosh, I'm sure, but I think ultimately too, it's just, it comes down to continually being reflective and knowing that no two students learn the exact same way. And so I can't think of an exact story off the top of my head, but knowing that, you know, it's my job to teach them all and reach them in whatever way possible.
And I know that you've had countless examples of kids who might not feel like they could do it.
Yeah.
But they're like, if I could just be close to you, like, can I just sit right here? Can I sit on the floor next to you? And it was just knowing that your presence was there with them.
Yeah.
You know, or I have a student, we do a lot of team intervention work. And right now, Alyx is working with a group of my kids on comprehension specifically. And one of my students, he came back and he told me, he goes, I'm so glad that Miss Ramsey is helping me with my comprehension. He was like, it's not because, Miss Walsh, you're not a good teacher. I was like, oh, thank you. He was like, it's just, I'm glad that she's putting the extra effort into me. And I think that's a beautiful thing, is like knowing that, like, those kids, they know we have their back.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, they're seen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
they're
that's big.
and they're like, hey, this is an area I don't feel good at, but you're gonna have my back and you're gonna be there for me.
Yeah.
Well, you
Thanks.
guys mentioned the School of Innovation and the mission, right?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about what the mission is here at Rollins, what the risks you guys take, and the payoff in doing things just a little bit differently, what that looks like.
Well, the heart of our mission is
Yeah.
student agency.
Yeah.
So helping our learners take control of their learning and be those groundbreakers, be those discoverers, to approach the world with wonder and curiosity, and to understand that that wondering is valued and valuable.
Yeah.
So like this morning, we were just talking about our snow days, and my kids and I, we follow a tiger sanctuary up in Wisconsin, and I love it. But the kids were like, okay, Miss Walls, so what is the varying sizes of tigers and jaguars and lions? And I was like, well, let's look this up. And then they wanted to learn about apex predators. I'm like, we have 10 minutes. We can talk about this, right? Like, I'm gonna search this up. And then well, I need to learn more about this. I'm like, okay, so that could be something you research. And they wrote those wonders down as hey, if we're inside recess today, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful to see them do that, where you'll walk by, it's inside recess time, they get to play, but they'll have their computers out and be on Epic. I'm learning about the leopard seal. You know, I didn't realize they were an apex predator. And you're like, they're so, you know, and they'll be telling me all these things. So that, first of all, is the core of who we are.
Yeah.
Is just to cultivate that wonder for learning. And then I also would say the risks that we take, the environment. I think a lot
Yeah.
of teachers look at our environment and they're like,
No way. Couldn't do
how
it.
do you teach in an open environment? But I would say that most of us would not go back to a closed
There's
environment.
no way. I truly can't even imagine what that would feel like to go back into a classroom that had 4 walls and a door.
Why don't they compare?
Okay, there's a lot of reasons why. I feel like we get this question a lot, and I think my answer has changed a little bit over time. At first, it was obviously collaboration, right? Okay, for sure, that is probably the number one reason, because, for example, we had this was last year, but we had these math warm-ups that we were doing with our kids, and there was a question that the way it was worded made no sense. And my kids and I were both going round and round, like, okay, well, I think it could be this one, but it could also be this one. I'm not really sure. As a class, we literally just stood up, walked into Jessie's room, and then 50 students plus the 2 of us were discussing it. And then our third teammate was like, wait a second, my class and I are also having a hard time with this math discussion. Then they came over. And so then it became this powerful opportunity where the kids were able to see, number one, that we weren't sure, and it could have been multiple things, but then all of their learning was brought together. So the collaboration piece, for sure, is number one. But I also think, going back to what Jessie said, that really started our work at George was making learning visible. And there's a lot of different things we've done over the years, things that have worked, things that were like, okay, we can't do that again. But ultimately, kids are able to see the learning of other classes at all times. And there's accountability in that. There's safety in that. Like today, Jessie's class, they're a little ahead of us in our writing lessons. Because I'm kind of a yapper sometimes, so we get a little bit behind, but that's okay. But I was telling them, I said, okay, boys and girls, do you see what they're doing today? Because they're talking about like helping a video game designer design a video game. That is incredible. I was like, but boys and girls, in order for us to get to where they are, we have to complete where we are. So we've got to be locked in so that we can make sure we understand what an opinion piece is, how to, create valid reasons to support our opinion. In order to get there, which we can see where they are, we have to get through where we are. But also we've done things where we've done different lines of learning in the hallway that are visible to everyone that walks by. But it is cool, obviously, just to be like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And pop over and ask. But yeah, because obviously our environment, number one, that makes us innovative, right? Because it's different in a way.
Yeah, we're changing things.
Right. But you could also, if you brought someone in this school that didn't have the vision for innovation, their instruction wouldn't change. And that is where true innovation comes in. And I think we see that a lot in the different moves we've made. We do school-wide wonder projects. And they present to their parents to all the grade levels. And so those are some huge innovative things we do.
They are.
And what about when your tank's empty? Because it's a very emotional job that you guys have. And it's not just the students you're dealing with, but you're trying to support their families too, and how you might complement what they're doing at home. And then you've got every other teacher in school and administrators.
Right.
How do you guys refuel your tank at the end of the day?
That is a great question. And that is a very hard thing. I think for me personally, working with people who have the same mindset.
Yes.
And Alyx said it earlier about iron sharpening iron. Sometimes when you're having a tough day, it's because you're, wallowing, right? And then you need someone to come and be like, hey, I'm going to help lift you up.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're having a tough day, you have every right to have a tough day. And you have people who are going to say, hey, I'm going to put my arm around you and I'm going to hold you up. And I think that having a group of people who are like-minded, who are encouragers, is ideal. But I also think that another thing about our team, and Alyx especially, is they always point us back to the joy. Because joy is a spark that can ignite passion back.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like feeds me a lot. And I'll be honest with you, there are days where it's hard. But I always find that at some point during that day, there's going to be a kid that says something.
Oh, 100%.
Always. Or just does something. And you just kind of see that little light and you're like, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is again. And that's what I'm going to focus on today.
Yeah.
And I can let the rest of it lay for now. I can let it lie. And I'll come back to it when I'm ready. But I'm going to focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're human, so we're going to fail, right? We're going to fail and have a grumpy day, I think another thing, too, is recognizing when we maybe are a little grouchy towards our kids, Hey, boys and girls, I'm sorry. I reacted out of frustration. I had to say that today. But Jessie's right. I mean, goodness, there is Miss Ferris walked into my room on Friday, which, let's be real, we had 4 snow days and we came back to school for 1 day. The kids were wild. We were stir crazy ourselves. She walked into my room, a kid came up, told me that I had made their brain explode from our math problem. And she looked at me and she said, no other job gets to hear things like that, do they?
That's true.
And she's so right. I mean, there are always moments that you can look for. And when you look for joy, when you seek it, you find it. And even if that's when I'm teaching a math lesson at an inopportune time, a kid gets up and wants to hug me in the middle of the math lesson. I can choose to say, hey, that's annoying right now, I'm trying to teach you math. Or I can be like, you know what, no, that kid probably needed a hug, or they just wanted a moment of connection, So it ultimately comes down to, Jessie nailed it, right? Working with an incredible team who lifts you up and you can't imagine doing anything else without, but also looking for those moments of joy.
I was just going to say, too, we do a lot of encouraging with our students, of course. All teachers do. But I always think it's also so rewarding when you look at the kids and you're like, guys, I messed up there. And immediately 3 or 4 kids go, "Oh, Ms. Walls, that makes you human." I'm like, "Oh, you're so right." You know, and I think that that's a beautiful thing, is like, because we pour into them.
So we've touched on so much, and I really appreciate everything you guys have shared with us today. Is there anything to add to the conversation, or that you thought to mention that I didn't consider?
I just want to take a minute to just say thank you to everyone that makes Springdale Springdale.
Yeah.
To every staff member who pours into students, and to the staff members that pour into the teachers, and to the staff members that pour into the people who pour into the teachers. You know, that age-old, if it takes a village, it does. And Springdale's a pretty awesome village.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful to be part of it.
100%. I truly can't imagine teaching for any other district. Truly, like I said at the very beginning, I know Springdale is huge, but it feels small because it feels like this network that we all have access to, and equal access to. You know, if I have a question that we can't answer here, I know people in 6 other buildings that I can reach out to, you know, and if they don't know, you know, there are people that can reach out. And that's something that you can't take for granted, you know?
You know, and we keep saying that Springdale feels like home, but I also feel like it feels like a place of hope.
Yeah.
Hope for me as an educator, that I can grow and I can be challenged. But more importantly, a hope for our families and our students, that here's where they find their future.
That's right.
And we're gonna light it up for them.
Yeah.
And that's all amazing. Thank you for serving our families and our students. And we have so many incredible educators. You're just two.
Just to
Thousands of hearts that are supporting our families and our students. So thank you for everything you do and for showing up every single day. We're grateful for you.
Thank you so much.
You can catch this and previous episodes of Springdale Today on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and listen to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. We look forward to chatting with you next time on Springdale Today.
Springdale Today is a production of Springdale Public Schools Communication Office.
The podcast is hosted by Mary Jordan and is produced and edited by Micah DeLacy.
Be sure to subscribe to Springdale Today for free on your favorite podcast platform.
And don't forget to follow Springdale Today on social media for episode updates and behind-the-scenes conversations.
Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us in the future.
As we continue to learn about the amazing stories happening in Springdale today.